Okay, good evening. The Design Review Board number 2 meeting of November the 29th, 2012 is called to order. Please refrain from talking amongst yourselves and please turn off or put on vibrate all cell phones. If you need to talk, please leave the meeting room. Anyone who wishes to speak, including applicants, is asked to completely fill out one of the speaker cards provided at the table by the front door and submit it to staff. You will be called to present a case or speak on a specific item as desired. Anyone who wishes to be re-noticed about a case is asked to completely fill out one of the postcards provided at the table by the front door, and you will receive notice of subsequent meetings. Current Design Review Board agendas are available on our website at www.ci.glendale.ca.us. A handout describing the procedures of the meeting, possible board decisions, and Design Review Board reconsideration and appeals is available at the table by the front door. Please note that all appeals must be filed within 15 calendar days of the Design Review Board decision date. The chairperson may reorder agenda items at his discretion. In terms of a roll call, Board Member Garagos?
Here.
Board Member Karoglian?
Here.
Board Member Malikian?
Here.
Board Member Sakai is not here this evening, and Chairman Zarifian.
Here.
The report regarding posting of the agenda. The agenda for this meeting was posted on the bulletin board outside City Hall at or before 5 p.m. on November 10th, 2012. Oral communications. Discussion is limited to items not a part of this agenda. I have no oral communication cards. Chairman Zarifian, I don't believe you have any either. Okay. Which brings us to the review calendar. There are no staff announcements at this time, and there is one case on tonight's agenda. So, I would like to turn the meeting over to Chairman Zarifian.
Yeah, I'm trying to just look at how many we have. About 6, 7, 8, 10. I'd like to start the meeting first by apologizing that I was late. There was a flat tire on the 5, which caused a big backup. But other than that, we have a number of speakers, and I would like to ask the community members if they would like to have a choice of each one speaking or have a speaker who can speak on their behalf in terms of going through all the items that is of concern to you, or every one of you would like to speak. That will be a choice that I would like to present to you before we get started. Is there a speaker that, because we have, the reason is that we have received about maybe 10 letters, and they basically say the same issues and concerns, and we can hear them 10 times, or we can hear them for a longer period of time, discussing every one of them in further length by the members of each side. Seems like there's not a speaker on the.
Perhaps.
How much time?
Actually, the applicant has 5 minutes, and each of the speakers has 3.
Okay.
So,
That's
I'd like
fine.
to note that probably there should be a brief staff presentation before the members of the audience and
Sure.
the applicant are called
Sure.
out.
Yeah, we'll definitely start with the presentation. Why don't we just go ahead and do that?
Would you like me to? Okay.
Sure.
Okay, with that said, the case on tonight's agenda is case number 2-PDR-1234695 for the record. The project is located at 2700 Piedmont Avenue, and the applicant is Mr. Gary Akopian. The project involves the construction of 4-unit townhouse residential development on an existing lot that features a storybook home that is slated for preservation. So the storybook home will be preserved. There is an existing duplex that will be demolished as part of the project, and there are 4 oak trees, even though it looks like there are only 3, but there are technically 4 oak trees on the property, all of which are being preserved as part of the project. The board last saw a similar project, and this was back on August 23rd, 2012, several months ago, at which time the board voted 3-1 to return for redesign with several significant comments. Prior to that, there had been an initial proposal that was reviewed back in 2011, and again, at that point in time, the board had voted also to return for redesign, but the project had been redesigned completely, and more time had elapsed between the design review board, so essentially, this would technically be by code a second final review. There was a setback variance that was approved in 2009, which allowed for a reduced front yard setback along Piedmont Avenue, because at this location, this is a corner lot and Piedmont curves on both sides. And so essentially, a setback variance an application was submitted and approved by the planning hearing officer in 2009. The project complies with all of the zoning code standards for its zone of R1650, which is a medium high density zone, and it does comply also with the approved standards variance.
I have a question on that.
Yes.
And that was in 2011?
The variance,
Variance?
or
The
the variance was approved in 2009, and
2009?
they have received a 1-year time extension.
Okay.
So they filed and received
And
a 1-year.
the design that went in front of the hearing officer for the variance, was it the same, or was it reduced, or
The
the one that we saw on the 2011?
2011 was the one that was presented to.
Okay.
So essentially the same footprint
Okay.
of the building. So
Okay.
the footprint has not changed.
Okay.
Essentially, the design and the
Okay.
massing of it has.
And then on the variance that was approved, were there any kind of an environmental or anything that was approved with that variance?
No.
Being that there was oak trees or any?
There was a categorical exemption.
Okay.
And the categorical exemption from CEQA, so did not,
Okay.
because of that, they did not require an environmental review in terms of a negative declaration or whatnot.
Okay.
For the previous proposal, there had been 2 of the oak trees that was reviewed by the planning hearing officer. 2 of the oak trees were proposed to be maintained. One was slated for removal. And again, the actual topic for the planning hearing officer was the reduced front setbacks. So they were primarily looking at the footprint of the building and its relation to the street.
No, just for the record, the zoning hearing was in June 2010.
Thank you for that correction. I guess the case number actually was PVAR standards variance case number 2009-039. And
So in the variance, it was they were proposing to remove one of the trees and
Correct.
then modify the other, or did I correct?
They were proposing to maintain the 2 trees that you see in the old plans behind you,
Okay.
and to remove the one that was by the driveway.
Okay. Because you mentioned there's 4 of them. So that's-
There are technically 4 trees, as mentioned in the arborist report. May I come up to the board?
Sure.
It's identified as tree number 1 on the northeast corner. There are actually, there's 2 oak trees, but the actual trunks are very close together, so it gives the appearance that it's only 1 tree, and they are maintaining both of those 2 trunks that appear to be 1 oak tree, but are actually technically 2. And then this would be considered oak tree number 4 in the arborist tract report.
Thank you.
Okay. So, going on, what I would like to do is go straight to the comments from the August 23rd, 2012, and there is a correction in your staff report. The staff report addresses the board's comments from the August 2012 meeting. However, it was incorrectly titled as the comments being from the October 2011, the original. So there was a typo in terms of the titling of those comments. But the actual comments themselves are from the most recent hearing by the DRB. The first comment was to reevaluate and reconfigure the building forms to be more fully integrated. Specifically, the intersections between the forms with the flat roofs and those with gables should be resolved. Portions of flat roofs may remain, but should make sense three-dimensionally, while better transitions between the pitched and gable roofs should be developed. And as you see here, there are actually drawings from one of the design review board members actually on the elevation. You'll notice that these were the locations where the board felt that there was an unresolved roof integration, so that you'd have a flat roof, a gabled roof, you'd have juxtapositions, especially, now this is on the north side facing Piedmont, on the interior property line facing westerly, the interior facing the condo to the west. There were flat roofs and pitched roofs. There was quite a bit of discussion previously, and also the elevation facing the storybook. You'll notice in comparison, the roof lines, the integration of the flat roofs and the pitched roofs has been addressed, actually more so and most obvious on the interior elevation facing the condominium, so that there's less of an overall massive volumetric appearance. It's toned down by introducing horizontal roof elements and then integrating the proposed flat roofs better with the pitched roofs. You'll also notice there have been changes to the roof structure, the roof lines on the south elevation facing the storybook house. So the applicant has addressed at least the flat roofs versus the pitched roofs and those integrations. The second comment from the board was to provide more integration and design interest on the south and west elevations, in keeping with the north and east elevations. The south and east elevations should be as fully developed as the street-facing portions of the building. In particular, the south side of the building facing the storybook house should be fully developed to provide a coherent building design and better relate to the storybook house. Similar to the previous comment with the roof integration, you'll notice the detailing, the paneling, the roof integration is more consistent, whereas previously the street-facing facades did not match the interior facades. You'll notice there is more cohesion between all four facades in the reconfigured design. The third comment by the board was to neutralize the color for the stucco walls to better fit the neighborhood context, provide a palette that includes grays, greens, or muted earthy colors, eliminating the yellow or bright colors proposed. Again, you'll notice there was quite a bit of discussion by the board in terms of this color palette and the yellow walls. They have been toned down, and the panels themselves remain the same, sort of an earthy brown with lime green accents and then a muted wall pattern. The color board for your review is right here. So, the fourth comment by the board was to preserve the existing oak trees slated for removal adjacent to the driveway if possible, in light of the site plan changes and the relocation of the building corner away from the storybook single-family house. If necessary, remove or reduce the small portion of the building that will impact the tree. You'll notice in the previous proposal, they were only preserving the oak tree, the interior courtyard, and the north corner location. They are now, in the current proposal, retaining the existing oak tree, which, as the board knows, both the public and the board felt strongly in terms of having this preserved. There was an addendum done to the arborist tree report. You have that on file right here. You'll notice also there were comments made by the arborist that included revised mitigation measures for protection of the oak tree. Number 5 was to reconfigure the common open space, incorporating more landscape screening between the single-family house and the deck areas of the multifamily project for more comfortable and usable open spaces. Provide a continuous planter at the interior property line with certain pop-out portions, a minimum of 5 feet wide and 3 foot deep, to provide for at least 2 or 3 trees. We have the landscape planter. Again, the previous proposal had a very narrow landscape planter If you recall, Board Member Sakai, who unfortunately is not here with us this evening, was the one who requested pop-outs in this landscape planner to provide greater screening between the current development and the condominium building to the west. The applicant has come back. They are proposing more screening between the two properties, and they are including several trees in regards to the kangaroo paws and whatnot, but there has been comment made that perhaps there should be even more screening, taller landscaping proposed to better screen the two properties. The sixth comment was to provide confirmation from the fire and Glendale Water Power departments regarding the proposed locations of the meters and backflow devices prior to plan check. The applicant has confirmed the meter locations, again, with fire and GWP. And the final comment was to provide a protection plan for the Storybook House and stone wall for approval by staff prior to plan check submittal for the protection of the Storybook House, the oak trees, and the stone wall during construction. Provide a historic preservation plan for future repair and rehabilitation of the Storybook House prior to building permit issuance. So again, there are two parts. There's a protection plan and there's a preservation plan. The protection plan was submitted as part of the DRB packet. You'll notice there are notations for the preservation of the tree and the stone wall. There's also the access to the construction site noted. You'll have notations here. The preservation plan for the Storybook House is required to be submitted as part of plan check. Okay, those would be the 7 comments that the board had at its previous meeting on August the 23rd. There was quite a bit of discussion at that meeting in regards to the mass and scale, and mass and scale remains a very prominent issue for discussion, you know, given the amount of emails we've received and also discussion that's been by the public. Staff in the previous proposal had mentioned that it's a 3-story structure. The 3 end units are 3-story. The unit facing the street closest to Piedmont to the north is a 2-story structure, so it does address the street surroundings better. There is staggering of the roof lines and whatnot, but that essentially this would be the only 3-story structure in the neighborhood. The board had felt at that point in time that a 3-story structure might not be out of place depending on how it is designed, how it's massed, how the scaling of the project and whatnot. So there was quite a bit of discussion back and forth between the board members last time. So it is up to the board now, based on your previous comments and how the current project addresses it, whether the board feels that currently it is compatible with the surrounding neighborhood and whether this proposed design could be approved or approved with conditions. This is a second submittal for final review, so your options would be to either approve it with conditions. There is no denial at this point in time. Just to let you know, the board can vote to also return for redesign. That concludes. It can. So there is a third possibility, an option of going back to the board for a third time by code. Do you have any further questions? I'd be more than happy to answer it. Otherwise, I know that there are a number of individuals in the audience that would like to speak.
Any questions? Okay. So I guess at this point, we'll open the public session. First speaker, the applicant, Mr. Gary Agopian. Or maybe we'll start with Shorik Yepremian.
Good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the Design Review Board. Shorik Yepremian Consulting. You have my address and phone number on record. I'm representing the property owner, Mr. Josep Kiramichian, who is present here this evening, along with his project designer, Gary Agopian. The project had several reviews by the Design Review Board. The latest plans were reviewed on August 23, 2012, at which time the board made a decision to return for redesign with several conditions. The project design was restudied and resubmitted again for the third time. Again, this is a 4-unit residential development with semi-subterranean parking in R1650 zone. There is a single-family house which is proposed to be preserved because of its potential historic character. As Vilya mentioned, the setback variance, case number PVAR 2009-39, was approved on June 24th, 2010, to allow reduced setback along Piedmont Avenue on the east side. Earlier this year, we have filed for a time extension for that variance approval until this board reviews and approves the project. The overall site plan is very similar, what you see from prior submittals, due to site constraints. There are some changes, however, to the site plan, like preserving the existing oak tree near the driveway, and that was something the project designer and the owner offered because of the changes to the curve of the driveway. That was last design review board meeting. More landscaping was also added per design review board condition surrounding the open space between the storybook structure and the new development, as well as additional landscaping to the west side of the property along the open space deck. Initially, the height of the building, if we want to compare from prior submittals, was 41 feet. Then it came down to 39 feet 8 inches at the last review, and now it's about 38 feet 6 inches when we look at the overall height. The color also changes. You can see from prior submittal, which had banana cream or yellow color, to gray-green color that you see behind you. The roof has been also redesigned as well to integrate better between different roof styles and different pitches, roof pitches. These changes added more percentage to the lot coverage and more common open space in square footage, more landscaping percentage compared to prior submittals, including the height of the building as well as the overall square footage of the entire building. In terms of mass and scale, the proposed design is a 3-story building, which is allowed per code. A 3-story structure is allowed under R1650 zone. And if you notice the plans, only the middle units, 2, 3, 4 units have 3-story structure. The front unit, which is the north side unit, has a 2-story townhouse unit. The density allows 6 units on this property. Again, we have 4-unit development with 1 unit, which is the storybook house, to be preserved, totaling 5 units on this project site. I did review the staff report, staff recommendations. As you can see, according to staff and the staff report, all of the conditions highlighted in your last design review board meeting have been met, and we do respectfully ask that you accept staff's recommendation and hope that the board approves this project tonight after so many years of, we've been in this process for at least 4 years now, initially with the historic structure, historic preservation reports, then variance issues, and then DRB. So the project, the property owner has been in this process for more than 4 years. He has spent tremendous amount of money every time he had to refile for a new design review application, and we would like to respectfully request that you approve this project today and accept staff's recommendation. Thank you.
I have a question.
Sure.
Can you explain a little bit about the historic preservation report? And you said 4 years of that. Can you give us a little bit of an insight information?
Initially, when the development application was filed with staff, there was a question about the historic characters on the houses. I believe there was a duplex on this property as well, which was determined by staff that it was not historic. The house that you see that's proposed to be preserved, staff questioned if that was historic or not. Staff required a report to be prepared by historic preservation specialist, and the report were prepared and submitted for staff review.
Okay.
So staff determined that was a potentially historic building.
And the report said the same as well?
The report, it was long time ago. I believe 2 separate reports were prepared. If my recollection is correct, they both concluded that it may not be historic and that they required additional studies.
I see.
My client agreed to preserve the building
Okay.
on this property. Otherwise, my client had to go through environmental review, and perhaps an EIR would have been required
Okay.
to further analyze the structure.
Okay.
So in order to avoid those additional steps, he agreed to preserve the structure.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think our next speaker would be Mr. Gary Akopian.
Good afternoon, Honorable Chair, board members. Gary Akopian. I'm designer of the project, and my address appears on my list. I believe you heard in details about the comments that we have previously by others. So I'm willing just to answer your question if there's so. If you have any.
Questions?
Not at this point.
Thank you.
We don't have any
Basically,
specific questions.
I did my homework. I went through that all comments, and I strongly believe that I met those comments fully and even more. Just one, I want to pay attention on that tree issue. That third tree issue. I like to tell that. That was our initiative to keep that tree because we feel like we kind of doing some additional efforts to make that area and that space more pleasant, and also it's good asset to the entire neighborhood. But as I said, it's our initiative. It wasn't being part of the previous deal, and it just came up at the last meeting.
Actually, I do have a question. It's a question for a questioner. I think you had mentioned at one of the other meetings there was some investigation he would need to do about some code issues. Am I confusing something? There's something about maybe soils or something. I can't remember exactly. I should have reviewed that. A question about something you probably should check with building and safety or fire about before.
It was about handicap accessibility
Was that
of
it?
the first floor. Yeah.
Have you talked to somebody about that?
I did actually change some the plans of the first floor to
Okay.
meet that requirement.
So you've addressed
Oh
this?
yeah, definitely.
Okay, all right. I
Especially,
remember
yeah,
something
I
about
did
it.
that
Okay.
changes.
Okay.
If you compare
so many
first
things
floor,
I know, I didn't mean to put you on the spot, I
yeah,
apologize.
if you compare first floors,
But he had some good comments last time, I just... wanted to-
that's true. Those 4 units supposed to be adaptable.
I've
And,
looked at it, I couldn't find any problem
Okay,
with it.
that's fine, I just remembered you had some nice comments.
Yeah, you could compare those
That's fine.
plans, and you'll see the changes.
They were his questions, not mine.
All right.
They were good, I won't cherry pick his. Thank you, thank you.
I have one
Sure.
question. Just thought of it. what happens here? This one material stops and there's a change of material on the face.
Yes.
There's no plane change.
I got to look at the plan.
It
I
happens
believe yes, no changes.
This corner. Not very clear what's actually.
there is a change.
Does it stop
there is
here?
a change.
Actually, right here.
So there is a change.
Yes,
okay.
yes.
But the shadows are in the other direction. It's not very clear.
So it's
So this is back.
no.
Oh,
This is forward.
Where is
This
it?
There. Compound. This is forward.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. This is
Yeah.
forward, that's back. Okay.
It set it off.
Okay, thanks. That's all.
That's all?
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm willing to answer during the...
Sure, yeah, we might have more questions in the rebuttal if we need it. Thank you.
May I please interject
Sure.
for a moment? This is a second submittal for final review, and it by code, one of the options is to go ahead and deny the project. So that is a possibility by code for a second final review. Okay. Also, before staff begins, or before the public testimony, I'd like to read into the record, not the letters themselves.
Been reading
I'd
it
be here
for
for
a
a
week.
very, very long time if I
Ran out
did.
of
But
ink.
just the individuals and their names who submitted letters, and all of the board members received copies of it, as well as the project team. We received a letter from Daniel Stubbs detailing the North Glendale Community Plan. A letter from Mr. Grant Michaels on behalf of the Montrose Verdugo City Spar Heights Neighborhood Association. A letter from Ms. Joyce Hart, email I should say, correction. One from Nancy Como. One from Greg Rammer, Joan Goodell, Nancy Reggiani, Mr. Bill Weissman, Barbara Hannigan, Keith Palmer, Roberta Medford, Patricia Marsh, and Melanie McKinnell. And it should be noted that all of these were letters in opposition to the project, primarily stating opposition to the proposed mass and scale, concerns also to the historical nature of the Storybook home, as well as concerns regarding the oak tree preservation.
There was the letter from Greg Grammer was on behalf of the Glendale Historical Society, and their concern was just that you continue with the condition to have the preservation plan prepared. So they're satisfied with that if it moves forward.
Okay, thank you so much. So our next speaker would be Sherry Stubbs. Please come forward.
My name is Sherry Stubbs, local resident of Glendale. A couple of points. I don't believe the conditions set forth in the August 23 report have been met. There's going to be a 3.5 stories to the south, for one thing. I sent an email, as Vilya noted, and I would like to reiterate those comments, and I hope you've had a chance to look at it. In addition, to me, the project is a non-starter from every angle and in every respect. Mass and scale, site location, compatibility to surrounding context, design, materials, color palette, even safety. To include lime green in the color palette is totally out of context. There is already one income-producing property on the site. The intent is to have 5. Even though they noted there was, the code allows for 6, I don't see it, but then I'm not schooled in that area. So there is already one income-producing property on the site. The intent is to have 5, but the site is not conducive to 5. What's wrong with decreasing the intent to 4? More options would be available which would meet the criteria of all parties, the city, the developer, and the community. So my request is that the project should either be returned for redesign or denied. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Nancy, I'm having trouble reading. Kamian? Come on.
Good evening, Board. My name is Nancy Camo, and I'm primarily representing the North Glendale Community Plan as someone who served on that committee. I want to start by sincerely commending the owner of this property for agreeing to retain and upgrade the Storybook House, preserving the oak trees, and making other adjustments to create a more acceptable structure. Nevertheless, I have to say for the record that overall this project does not fit our vision as expressed in the North Glendale Community Plan, labored over by many of us in the community and ultimately approved by our City Council. Preserving and enhancing neighborhood character is the centerpiece, one of the centerpieces of this plan. And we feel that this does not do that. Primarily, the mass and scale, the height, the zonal transition, the style, do not sufficiently comply with the stated goals of the NGCP. And secondarily, the oak trees in the Storybook House may well tilt more towards being compromised than preserved. The oak trees, despite best efforts, may indeed not survive the disturbances so close to their bases and the requisite root loss. If this is returned for design, if it is downsized, as has been recommended, perhaps the driveway could be moved so that it doesn't run through the front yard of this wonderful Storybook House that we're trying to preserve. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mary Ann Jennings?
Can I ask that my be used by Grant Michaels here?
Sure. Grant McKells.
By the way, the timer will go off then in 3, and then we'll give you an additional 3.
Sure.
Good evening. I'm Grant Michaels. I'm the president of the Montrose Verdugo City Spar Heights Neighborhood Association. I will try and ensure that my comments are not repetitive, but go into greater detail. We've been following this project since the beginning, and in this current design, we believe it's not compatible with the neighborhood or the community at large. In following and looking at the North Glendale plan, Piedmont Avenue has several homes that were represented in the North Glendale plan. Page 76 details a townhome complex at La Crescenta, details the apartment buildings shown directly across from the site, and a small 2-story home in the single-family neighborhood as examples of good design. This project would be a transitional project from the edge of the multifamily neighborhood into the single-family neighborhood. At 3 stories of residential units, that is a story larger than anything else in the neighborhood. As a transitional element, that isn't compatible. The townhome at the end of the street is 2 stories over a residential subterranean garage, recognized with varied roof forms, round and square elements. The apartment building is recognized for its varied roof line. You can see from the Google image above that the square rooms are separated, allowing more of a light to pass through, and from street level, it appears to break up the roof line. Looking at the new design, the roof forms are better integrated, but it has the effect is it's increased the profile and thus the mass of the building. In comparison to the element described by the apartment building, it fails in that regard to break up the mass and make the structure appear less massive. I still believe that the podium-style garage should be staggered to reflect the topography of the project. All of the other townhomes to the west do follow the grade and do slope. This project is planned going level from the north at street level, with Piedmont wrapping around. The entire southerly facade and all of the eastern facade would be visible from a frontage street. So if there are 3 residential stories, yes, looking at it from one section of Piedmont forward in what they are defining the front of the building, it would appear the roof line is staggered and set back. The variance was granted to allow the side setback to come closer to the frontage road. With that setback, the effect of the 3rd story increases the size and the mass. With the profile being added to the roof line, you're exasperating that effect. The integration between the new Craftsman style and the existing storybook, the contemporary design of the new project and the Craftsman style of the storybook house, there are some elements that do not appear fully integrated. In the plans, we have not seen an idea of what the restoration of the storybook house may look like. The use of the stone wall, whether it's with the engineered stone at the base of the new contemporary style building, the lighting features, or some of the other more contemporary aspects, may not integrate well with the existing Craftsman and historic elements on the property. The surface details, which I believe Chair Zarifian noted, are not, in my opinion, from my complex is the complex right next door. So those details are effectively surface details. They do not really appear to meet the condition of redesigning the south and the eastern facades to provide a more meaningful transition to both the storybook house and to the neighborhood. Those facades and the changes that are made make the structure appear more massive, as do the large dark panels that have continued with the design. The question of the oaks is still valid. I would like to see some explanation or verification from the forester's report if the footing of the building would encroach in the root line or encroach in the root base, as it appears to. The footing for the north oak includes several feet of sand fill in what I can determine is the root base of the tree. Clarification for that should be included as part of the design. We are still concerned greatly with the preservation of the historic storybook home and the other elements. We are pleased with the protection plan and happy that the historical planner, the various historical societies are taking interest and are monitoring that, but we would like to see elements of the preservation of that included with part of the design so that the integration between the two can be seen and possibly commented on to make sure the integration between the new contemporary design and the Craftsman style is maintained. In closing, I'd just like to add the North Glendale plan changed the zoning requirements through many of the commercial corridors, reducing the heights to 35 feet. I intend to follow up and make code more clear to push that through and have that affect the residential neighborhoods. The community at large supported the lower heights in the commercial areas. The fact that in residential areas now a height of 41 feet is allowable by code is not supported by the community. And I'm going to pursue clarifying that with the zoning code to make it more clear to developers the interests of the community.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think next speaker would be Andy Umberg.
Sorry, writing is terrible, I'm sorry. Andrea Humberger.
Andrea, okay.
I'm the founding president of the Montrose Verdugo City Spar Heights Neighborhood Association and a current board member. And most of my points have already been made, so I will try to make them as briefly as possible. Basically, I just wanted to say that our association has come to every design review board meeting on this project, and at every meeting we've basically made the same comments. The third story is really the issue for us, as well as, of course, the preservation of the Storybook House. In addition to, as the points have been made, in addition to the fact that the third story is not compatible in the neighborhood, it's not compatible now with the recently adopted North Glendale Community Plan. And as the point has been made already, but obviously the height of buildings in our area was a focus of that plan. There was much, it was a long process over a couple of years with a lot of community input, and the fact that there was so much sensitivity expressed on building height should be taken into account here on this project. So, third story is the main issue. I just also wanted to point out, I thought it was interesting, in one of the other comment letters from a group called the Piedmont Pines, they cited that there were previous projects proposed in the past in the area that did propose a third story over subterranean parking, and then in both of those cases that they cited, the addresses are in their letter, that those were sent back for redesign, and both of those projects ended up being 2 stories over subterranean parking, which is what we're hoping will happen to this project. So, we're asking you to send it back for redesign and basically remove the third floor. Those units can be made smaller, still be very functional, still serve, a residential use, and we think they should be fine. So we're hoping that you'll send it back for redesign, and if you approve it, we are planning to join forces with some other groups in the area and appeal the decision. Thanks.
Thank you. Our next speaker, Stuart Biles.
State your address.
Oh, sure. Can you please state your address, please?
My address?
Yes.
My name is Stuart Biles. I live at 4825 Janvier Way. It's in La Crescenta. I am the Vice President of the Historical Society of the Crescenta Valley, although I am not here representing them this evening. I'm simply a concerned resident. I applaud the owner's attempt to keep all the 3 trees here. I think it's a fabulous thing to do. It helps to add to the neighborhood. And their attempt to keep the Storybook House is a wonderful thing. I think, too, that their attempt to have a nod at craftsman-style design is in keeping with the residents, the neighborhood, and so forth. However, I, like all the rest so far, are concerned about the 3 stories. There simply isn't any other 3-story condominium or 3-story house anywhere in the neighborhood, so this is really not applicable or not compatible. Regardless of what the code says, I think allowing 3 stories would be a really dangerous precedent. If allowed, it would be like having the proverbial nose of the camel underneath the tent flap. So for that reason, it should be returned for redesign. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our last speaker would be Ms. Roberta Medford.
There might be a card missing, actually, so I'm not sure, but
Yeah,
please,
that's-
Ms. Medford, I don't want to...
That's the only
Hi, I'm Roberta Medford. I live about 5 blocks from the project, but I'm speaking because I was another member of the advisory committee of the North Glendale Community Plan, and I agree with what everyone said about the many ways this does not fit into the neighborhood, but I would like to testify that the height limits were discussed in excruciating length, at the advisory committee meetings for years. The North Glendale residents are strongly opposed to 3 stories on Foothill Boulevard, which is a major thoroughfare, a broad street, and totally commercial. So they are obviously not appropriate. It's not appropriate to have a 3-story building on a tiny little residential street where there are no other 3-story buildings. So I would ask that this project be sent back for redesign for many reasons, but particularly for the well-documented community sentiment opposing 3-story buildings in North Glendale. Thank you.
Thank you.
There should be. Get a card from Mr. Duckworth. If not,
Doug Ward.
yes.
Oh, sorry. I turned it with another one. I apologize. Mr. Doug Ward, please.
That's okay. At least I didn't get stuck in traffic on the way up here. I was lucky. So, my name is Doug Ward. I'm on the Piedmont Oak Owners Association. We're in the building that is just to the east of this proposed project. And our organization has drafted a document here I'd like to read to you about our concerns about the project. Piedmont Oaks Owners Association has followed this project and made comments at previous 2 DRB meetings and the variance hearing. We agree with the staff recommendations to have a historic preservation plan submitted, but have further comments which should be considered to improve the project design. Number 1, no building in the neighborhood have 3 residential stories built over a subterranean parking garage level. All of the existing buildings are comparable in height. The units of the project as currently designed have a master bedroom on the 2nd story. The proposed 3rd story could be eliminated without affecting the functionality of the units. Number 2, we agree a redesign of the podium-style garage to follow the topography of the natural grade. This would better match the existing complexes that currently allow the downslope. I have a photograph here from the roof of our building, which I will turn in, that does show this, that our building, as it progresses south, actually recedes with the hillside. I mean, with the hill, slope of the hill. A staggered roof line will serve to minimize the mass and scale of the structure, particularly when viewed from the single-family section of Piedmont Avenue looking west, as recommended by the North Glendale Community Plan. Expressing the building as a series of separate volumes would create a design that minimizes the impact of the mass and scale of this project, given the unique circumstance that the side of the project faces from the front street. Number 3, the staff report recognizes the need to provide a more reasonable transition between the proposed project and the Storybook House, and the proposed project in the adjoining properties. The recommendation to have the 2 end units be 2 stories, while an improvement over the current design, would not have a significant enough impact on diminishing the apparent size and mass due to the small lot size and the side setback being visible from the street. The mass and scale should respect the adjacent buildings and better transition to the single-family neighborhood, which is comprised of 1- and 2-story homes. Number 4, we do not believe this design meets the condition to reevaluate and reconfigure the building forms. The profile of the roof has been expanded and increases the mass of the structure. The transitions between the section of the roof are improved in appearance, but a better design would make the building profile less massive. Number 5, the condition to improve the design of the south and east facades is of great interest to our association, as our residents will view the structure from this perspective. A guideline from the city's comprehensive design guideline. A guideline from the city's comprehensive design guidelines is that the surface detailing should not serve as a substitute for well-integrated and distinctive massing. The addition of more cement board siding, the greater roof profile, and the color palette featuring large expanses of dark colors do not meet the intent of city guidelines. There's still more comments. I guess my 3 minutes are up.
If I'm not wrong, this was submitted as a letter, right? Also.
Actually, I did not receive a copy of this letter, so no.
So so I guess I will turn in the remainder of it then.
if you would, please.
Okay, yeah. And also, I have some more pictures from our roof viewing the project.
We did not receive a copy of this letter, so.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think this brings us to a rebuttal by the applicant.
Correct.
Mr. Chair, members of the Design Review Board, the variance for this project was approved about 2 years ago with a very similar project. Actually, at the time the variance was approved, the building was slightly larger with less lot coverage, landscaping. The oak tree that was all 4 oak trees, especially the one on the driveway, was proposed to be removed. The Design Review Board reviewed this project twice before. This is the third project review. Staff recommended approval twice. Last time, staff recommended approval, and for this particular review, staff also recommended approval. I trust that staff sufficiently reviewed the project along with other city departments, especially during the variance review. The oak trees were reviewed by the city's arborist. The historic preservation planner has been working on this project for the last 4 years. Every single requirement that the city had, the property owner complied with, including 2 very detailed historic preservation reports. Please keep in mind that this project has been in review, again, for the last 4 years. We understand the neighbors' concern and how this project relates to the current community plan. Again, this has been in the process for a long time, and I do highly recommend that you support staff's recommendation and you approve this project as presented today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I think this concludes our public session, and I think the floor is open for deliberations by the board members.
Can I lead it up?
Sure.
This is why you have design review boards. This is a. Turned on? It's on, isn't it?
Yeah.
This is a difficult case because I'm a little bit conflicted on it. But I'll tell you a couple things, bedrock things for me. The project, there will be a project on this site probably eventually. They are by rights to do certain things. So the question is, what is compatible and comparable but the thing to keep in mind ultimately is that he's essentially given up a third of the use of his site in order to maintain that storybook home. So I think there should be some acknowledgement of that fact. So consequently, if you took off a third of the project, it needs to go somewhere. So the difficulty for me on this project is that you're giving up a certain aspect of something, and that would lean me towards being more open to doing other aspects, which would be the third floor. And for me, the third floor is an issue, and I'm not really, I'm not 100% sure where I am on that. But I want you to know that it's because of the fact that a third of that site is not being used that pushes up the need for that third floor. And if you look across the street, there's 2 developments on that site, right across the street, that for all intents and purposes are 3 stories above grade. They have a subterranean garage and they have 2 floors above it. The mass of that facade on those 2 buildings is more massive than this building because the third floor in this one is set back. So I'm really conflicted about what happens. I do understand the fact that, with all my caveats, if I was supportive of the third floor, it will go on record as being a third floor for any future projects. And I'm sensitive to that neighborhood. I'm very familiar with that neighborhood. So it's a very difficult decision, and then I'm going to stay open to talking about with my colleagues here. But that, for me, is the real crux. I mean, it's not a total given that he couldn't have a third floor. He's able to have a third floor, And I think he's made concessions in terms of doing the storybook and not using a third of the property, which would push up the idea of letting him keep the third floor. But I understand it creates a precedent for the future. So that's a very difficult aspect. The other part of it is, if you look at those pictures, this is an RM 1650, which is almost the highest density in the city. That's what's allowed on that site. You have to understand what that means. I mean, that means a building that looks like what some of the people in this crowd live in, that building, that long, what I consider unattractive building. Okay, it doesn't really step, even though there's a slight change in those parapets, it's essentially a wall of balconies looking at this property. It's not a very happy neighbor to anybody else. So you have to understand where that's sitting. I mean, to be real about what's happening there. That building would not be approved now with that amount of its shape or form or anything about it, that building. And I'm sure Andre would probably hear complaining about that building if it was proposed today. So I see a nod. So we have to be real about what's happening in the neighborhood. I mean, it has been determined that this could be a very high-density corner, and we have to understand what can go there. And like I said, a third of that property is sort of turned over to the city, in a sense, is a public use, in my mind, in a big sense of the word, keeping that storybook as a public resource. So I'm wavering on it because I think, irrespective of the precedent it would create, I think he should have the third floor. But I understand the worry about creating a third floor of a subterranean garage. So that is a very difficult decision for me, and I'm still thinking about it. But we do need to understand what it is around and what is allowed and what the intent is for that neighborhood, which is a high-density zone. 1650 is a very high-density zone, and that's what is proposed there. So you would need to change that, which is the goal of that neighborhood, to change that zoning code. That's what is thought of there, is a very high-density building. So even though, and that's what happens in sort of transitional neighborhoods like that. I know everybody wants it to stay as it is, which is a nice neighborhood, but when there's an overlay of a very heavy density, in my mind, that becomes a transitional neighborhood, because there'll be projects that happen there which are going to be out of step with what is there, because 1650, like I said, is one of the highest densities in the city. So, very difficult decision for me. But overall, I think the project is well designed. I think visually it's nice. I think it's as nice as any other projects around there. I think it's more of a happy neighbor than the one that's adjacent to it. So on those aspects, I'm supportive of it, but I am right at the edge on the third floor.
Can I ask you a question? Can we change the view looking back to...
I'm desperately trying to do that, and it's not letting me, so give me a second.
Okay. Yeah, but meanwhile, if other board members like to speak, please.
I'm doing a little bit of a studying on my own, so
I'd like to go next.
if you don't mind.
Sure. The direction that I'm going to take on this case is basically based on the staff report, which states that the conditions of August 23rd meeting were addressed and met, and the staff went over each and every one of them. In addition to that, I am satisfied with the staff's current recommendation regarding the remodeling of the story book and the rehabilitation of it prior to final approval. And finally, we are expected to go by the rules and the zoning conditions and the current zones that are on the books. I do understand, I do realize the concerns of the neighbors. However, the Design Review Board has its guidelines, which are the zones, and until they are changed, we cannot anticipate what decisions the council might take in the future as far as downsizing or changing the entire zoning process. So I personally follow the guidelines that we have today, and I cannot anticipate what might happen in the future, leaving that to the future and to future designs.
Well, thank you. If everybody knows me by now, I think I've been here long enough that people should know how I make my decisions. I make my decision based on facts. And I appreciate all the letters that I've been receiving. I think I ran out of ink on my printer. I've been printing and reading them and kind of going through all these letters. The facts that I have right now in front of me, and I'm gonna look at the project on its own, and then we'll talk about the actual context of the project. First of all, the design. I agree with Mr. Geragos. I think it's a exceptional design. I think comparing to the existing buildings surrounding, I think it has a lot more character and a lot more details and articulations on the facade and the footprint and everything. So I think and overall, I think the design of this is definitely commendable, and I want to commend. Oh, you can't hear me. I'm so sorry. So I was talking about the design. That I think the design and comparing to the neighboring buildings, I think it's an exceptional design. I think the designer listened, paid a very careful attention to what we were asking for, and I think he went back and kind of addressed all these inconsistencies in the overall design. I think it made it much more powerful and much more appealing as far as the design itself. My concern originally was the oak tree, and I'm glad that it is being preserved. I didn't see any reason for it to be removed, and I'm glad that the arborist was able to update the report, and that report was done in time that the city arborist reviewed and changed and modified their findings with the addendum that was issued. So I'm glad that was done. The question now is the three-story, and I think that's the biggest thing. And that's what I was doing while everybody was talking. I was trying to put some scale and understand. And one thing that is missing in these drawings are the 3D perspective of somehow putting everything into context. But what I've done here is kind of outlined based on the dimensions that I have, the area, the three-story area. Approximately from the street side, even though there are some additional setback, the three-story has a staggered two-story section that is facing the east elevation. And this point, it's approximately, I want to say, over 40 feet or so, plus, or something like that. It's actually about 20-something feet from the edge of this, and that is sitting back diagonally. Facing the building itself, and I was trying to understand what it will do if we actually eliminate the top floor. Literally, it's not going to do anything because the second floor here is pretty much in line with the roof line. You know, by the time they're done with putting the roof in, you're essentially being, the mass, it's not being eliminated unless we get rid of the two floors of that, lower the entire roof down, then you have that open space. So getting rid of this little section, it's not really going to affect, it's not going to have the effect that everybody's trying to understand and look for. Then we come to the storyboard, and I'm glad that I got this because I didn't have this, and I'm glad that this was brought in. Kind of did a approximate scale, and and I don't have any dimensions, I don't have any information on the storybook, but based on the scale, assuming that from the balcony to the edge of the E, or the E line, the roof line, it's about 8 feet. Say about 8 feet. And then, so if we assume that that's another 8 feet to the bottom of the slab, or the actual garage, or where it hits the ground. So you're looking at about a 16-foot. Then you add on another about 8, so you're at the low point of the ridge of the storybook, it's about 24 feet. And then the pitch of that, it gives you another 8 foot approximately. You're looking at about 32 foot. So looking at this, is this highest point is 32 feet. This portion of the building that it's here, this is where everybody's saying it's 3.5 feet, but it's actually, this section is lower. This section is actually this, I don't know if everybody can see this, but it's approximately, this is the front part of this, which is this corner right here. This is actually lower. This is approximately, and I'll scale this up. This is another 2.5 feet lower. So again, I'm going back to all these 3.5 foot, stories and so on and so forth. But what I'm trying to say is that to me, the stepping of the building has been done so that it's lower at this point, that it kind of correlates and addresses the storybook. Steps back from the front and has a 2-story section. And at this point that is facing the street on the south side, you have these masses that are, again, 2-story, and these are stepped back again. So if we are okay with the 3-story, I think it's done appropriately, to be honest with you. I think they pushed and pulled and tucked it in away as much as possible. Now going to the question of, are we here to police what should have been done when they rezoned the area? I don't know. Are we the people? Maybe we are. And maybe we have to look at the 3-story and say, this city made a mistake, or we say, it fits. But architecturally, massing, the articulations, the materials used, the colors, I think definitely it's much more powerful and much more pleasant than some of the masses that we see around the neighborhood right now at this moment. So again, the question goes back to the 3-story. So facts show that it is substantially back. So you look at the entire mass of the footprint of the entire building, approximately 50% of the top floor is the 3-story section. The rest of them are 2-story or pulled back or pushed in. And the areas that are lower are fairly sensitive to the adjacent issues that may be a problem. And by the way, the 3-story is set back from the north side as well as the front entry. This is closer, which is the 2-story, and this is further back. So, and this is you can see the profile here, and then that's where the landscaper will be, or like right here, and then it steps down, and then the mass of the other building, according to what I see, it's about right about there. The garage is down here. So it's about there. So again, getting rid of the 3-story, it's not really going to block, open up a ton of, views or anything else. I mean, it is going to block this unless we just say completely forget about the development. I'm not seeing any gain of getting rid of that. But again,
the difficulty, it's almost semantics, because like I said, there's the 2 projects across the street. It's a full-height garage with 2 floors above it. So the intent of it is 3 stories. We're just saying 3 over a subterranean. That one is a face that is 3 stories, essentially. And that's the mass of that one Can you get that one up on
And,
there?
and,
This one here?
you know, the height,
No, it's on to the right. Those ones on the right.
Okay.
They're just off the.
The further up.
no,
You can just see
to
where
the
that truck is. Those two right there,
Okay.
right across. Yeah. If you can do a street view that looks at those, that'd be good.
I mean, comparing, I mean, maybe I'm missing something, and I'm trying to understand, like, all these letters that are coming, and, I mean, look at it, the apartment building that you have across the street, I mean, and comparing to what I'm seeing here, I really honestly cannot see what everybody else is seeing. And the mess of that apartment building is just amazing. I mean, people would like to see a 3-story or put
Those,
a
yeah.
parking. Doesn't have even anywhere close to the amount of materials that this project is being proposed. You got the stone, which is the fake stone in the front, and this one is preserving the stone, and you know.
I mean, that what I'm getting at is if you look at
that right there,
Yeah.
I mean, to me, you see the garage in the front, and just because it's tucked behind the landscaping and the podium, it is sitting on a podium garage, and it is a 2-story. Yes, it is a 2-story.
I'm saying
on top
that upper level on the second floor is what we're all calling a third
Exactly.
floor. I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's a 3-story facade on the street. That's what's there.
So, if every project around this was a 1-story building, and this project is being proposed in a single-family zone, that there are absolutely no apartment buildings, no massing, nothing there, then I completely understand what these letters are saying, but I'm just not seeing this. I'm not seeing they have gone through the huge extent of reforming and shaping, whereas this one is just a 2-story structure that comes up and pretty much the same elevation as you see, from ground up, and then you have these little details that are attached onto the face.
And actually, this third floor would be almost as far back or further back than that.
But there is a third floor on
And there's more first floor camouflaging or more
There is
second
a third floor on this further
No.
back. No?
There's not. My point is that roof line.
So probably
Above
if
is
you,
about where the third-
consider this as
saying from the street
as our
level,
project,
street level.
then based on the dimensions that I picked, the chimney over there, you take that white car and then go straight up. To the left, right there. That would be the third story further back.
No, no. What I'm saying is,
Is that what you're saying?
if you took an elevation of this building, that whole podium, the garage is almost a floor, and then you have 2 floors above it. So
Right.
from the sidewalk, it's a 3-floor elevation if you're doing
Right.
a drawing of it. I'm saying if you put it juxtaposed to this one, they would be similar in what I'm talking about. This is called 2 over a garage, but it's a full exposed garage. So essentially, you're looking at 3 stories there. That was my point. This is 3 over a garage. The garage is subterranean. But again, it's the semantics. I mean, if it was understood that is, I mean, nobody even mentioned this building, and I'm surprised the applicant didn't mention it. But in my mind, this has the kind of street facade in terms of the mass that this one would. So, nobody mentioned that this was terrible. So, I mean, it's going to have the same impact as this one would have when it's across the street.
Probably,
Or
I would
less. I mean, it
say
might slightly
probably
less. Yeah.
because you got all the trees and.
Right, but I'm saying that second floor, that upper floor, is what this one is calling a third floor. That's my point.
Right. Mr. Chair?
Mr. Chair?
Right, first of all, I'd like to really mention that how much I appreciate the work that has gone into analyzing this building by the neighbors, and as I always say, that shows a quality of a good neighborhood that is concerned about something and they do their homework and they really study and come up with issues that really concerns them as a community. So I really appreciate the work that has been done. I think we talk about number of stories, we talk about preservation, and different kind of numbers and words are used. I'm going to make my comments more broad brush in a way because it will help me to say what I like to say in a simpler way. First of all, I think the building has done, the architect has done a tremendous job trying to really break down the scale of the house, and the units, they look nice. They're nice looking. It's a nice looking building. There are a few details that I can ask later, but I think overall it's a nicely designed house. My problem, if we can go back to that view of the
aerial?
Yeah, the one that looks. You back up where we see the.
And the computer is really slow. So.
Yeah. I can start by talking about it. First thing is that when you have this, I think it's these are the units that kind of wrap around the house. There, if you can back out a bit. This is a better thing. So, when you put something that's higher than this surrounding piece, it becomes such a focal point. My question, and I'm being very honest in saying that I really like the building, but I just don't know how I can live in a house where like 15 units are looking at me. I'm the focal point of 15 units. That's kind of very conscious living condition. And then when I say preservation, the storybook house, it's true that we keep the house, but we put a big building next to it. We can talk about the numbers, a few feet higher and lower, which is a very valid point. I mean, we have to be cognizant of the real numbers and conditions. But at the end of the day, any building needs the right ground and the surrounding to come down to. I think in the site plan, if we say we preserve the building and then we put this driveway in front of it, basically that's not preservation in my view. It's like kind of keeping the house and doing something to it that I wouldn't do. I think architecturally having this big driveway, it's done as carefully as you could have done, and I think you've done a great job. But these are the two big issues to me that makes me, makes this such a hard decision, because I like the building. I think
you're questioning the entire project. So you're questioning that entire project rather than the height or this. So
yeah,
you're questioning is it valid to propose a project there or not? That's the question that you're bringing.
Yeah, that's basically. I mean, I sort of looked at the project. I said I like it. I kind of. One thing I have to say is that I physically couldn't go to the site because of my schedule issues. I couldn't be between when I got the package and day. There was no way physically that I could be there. But I looked at the aerial view and but I just think that anything that you put here, all these units are looking at it, except that the higher it becomes, the more becomes a face-to-face situation. You're looking at each other, and I'm wondering if there's a real way to be able to block that or create a buffer that will make this its own kind of quaint little environment. That's my question to the project. But I think as a building, if it's because it's a living unit, if it was a different use, I would say, yeah, people can maybe look at it, no problem. But if you're putting a higher living unit that is surrounded by all these apartments, kind of look, I guess it will be as if this was had another wing that was built here. I'm sorry I touched it. But if you put one more of these right there, it would have been the same thing. So I'm completely kind of disoriented in terms of how to think about it. But do you guys have any?
Well, my opinion on that would be is it is zoned as an apartment. So and it is surrounded. So it's, to me, it's not setting a precedent. This project is not really setting a precedent on that. I think it's a commended effort that I'm observing by providing a certain separation and also the character, the architecture that it's being proposed. I think it complements what's there now. And if they were going to design something close to what the storybook would have been, then it would have been a problem for me. I think the adjacent apartments are not really they're not really helping the situation. Let's just put it this way. It's not, if that was a one-story building or one-story structure and they were proposing this, then I would be completely against it. Right now, adjacent buildings that are there and across the street and so on and so forth are somehow justifying the proposal.
But I do agree that the third floor, its existence or otherwise, it's not the biggest problem.
Yeah, that to me, it really, I mean, the argument that the entire neighborhood and everybody's making is, let's get rid of the third floor, but what are you going to gain? You got to put a roof back on. So I'd rather have a flat roof of a room rather than a large pitch roof, which they're allowed to go a certain height, and I don't think they're going over their height limitation, are they? No. So if the discussion was that we would get rid of the second and third floor, then that would be something else. But the discussion is to get rid of the third floor. But what is being gained by that? I really don't see the gain of the elimination of that. My personal opinion, I'm not questioning the development of this project as you are. I'm leaning more towards I'm leaning towards the facts that I have and also the design that I have than the completely eliminating the project, being that there is a storybook building there. Then and I'm not sure, as you asked, I'm not sure what is that transition point. I mean, even if there was a two-story building, you're still going to have that transition point there. So really the question is not, do we just get rid of entirety of the two units and have like a 30-foot open space in between and then just have a two...
To be honest, I think it's unreasonable for somebody to assume that they have a straight view out of their second floor across somebody else's property. So especially in a high-density zone, which this one is a 1650. It's a very high density. If you see other areas that are developed as 1650, it's cheek to jowl, So no one really has that kind of openness that you have now. And the only reason you have it now is because nobody has developed that property.
This lot would have been ideal for it to be an R zone, to be honest with you. This lot would have been ideal.
As a transitional
As
one,
a
but it's not.
transition, but it's not.
It's not.
To preserve the storybook, to preserve that one story, and it would have been a perfect transition, but it's not. So are we here to rezone the lot?
Well, I mean, my thing, and this would be a direction to the community in terms of where the direction should go. You're fixating, and I was also about the three-story and the kind of precedent that would do. But you have to understand that property that's across the street, the way the city determines that height, it's from the low point. I don't know if you can get that up again or not, but when you look at those two properties across the street, when they determine height limit, it's where the exterior of the building comes out of the ground. So when you look at that building, those two buildings, they're taking the max height from where the garage door is. See where that gate is? Right there. That is the bottom of the building, and they're going all the way up to the top. Okay? So that is the maximum height of that building. So it's important you understand it's the height, not necessarily the number of stories. So consequently, if you're trying to avoid, in my mind, this is what you're talking about, a three-story building from grade. Okay, that's what this building is. This already is a three-story building. It's right across the street. If that is too much mass for you, you need to address it by maximum height. Because if this is compatible and is allowable, then this building is allowable. I mean, but I can understand somebody is thinking of a subterranean with 3 stories above it. But this building is that building in terms of its impact on the streetscape. So that's why it is difficult for me to deny somebody something that exists right across the street. So that's the difficulty. It's difficult. And in some ways, this is more broken up and has more feature than that one does. So, although this one has the berm, the landscape berm on it.
So,
but its impact on the street is the same.
Do you guys have any issues about the colors or any other thing? Because we just keep talking about the stories and...
No.
I don't have an issue with that. I think the real issue, especially with the community, is massing.
So, I'll give it a shot. We'll see what happens. I'll go ahead and read the staff's recommendation as part of the condition, and I like to approve the project with the staff's condition. Provide a historic preservation plan for future repair and rehabilitation of the storybook house, including a projected timeline for completion of the work prior to the issuance of the building permit for the new structure.
I'll second it, but I'd like to add something to it,
okay,
if you don't mind. I had mentioned at the previous meeting, I think one of the reasons that elevation is successful is the way that they're treating those French doors and that whole gable detail, that kind of mid-century feel, kind of slash craftsman. And I commented last time that I think those French doors are going to be expensive, and they said that that was factored in. But I would just like to really reinforce the fact, and I don't know how you would address this, that if those windows and doors change from this drawing, I think it's an issue in terms of how architecturally that's handled. So I would be concerned that that turned into something very standard looking that would really destroy what that facade is. So I don't know how you want to word that, but I think that's a big concern.
We could write a condition that if the windows and doors are to change to any significant degree in terms of material or overall appearance, will return to the board
Yeah, my worry is that all of a sudden they're going to lose all that upper area above the door, and they're just going to put a 6/8 there with a big expanse of stucco, and it's going to absolutely change the look of this building and diminish it considerably.
And,
So that's my
your
concern.
goal is to maintain the transparency under the gables provided by the windows and the French
Right.
doors, and if that changes, we'll bring it back to the
Yeah, I
board.
think it would turn into something that I don't think we'd be as happy with. So I would be concerned about that.
Okay, well, we'll make that a condition, and then I think you have to re-motion.
Oh.
Sure, Bill, you.
I
You can- if he-
recommend approval with added condition.
A second?
So I have a motion to approve with conditions, two conditions. A motion made by Board Member Malikian and a second by Board Member Garagos. So in terms of roll call, Board Member Garagos?
Yes.
Board Member Karoglian?
Yes.
Board Member Malikian?
Yes.
Chairman Zarifian?
Chairman Zarifian?
Yeah, I'm thinking.
Always abstain.
Be political.
No, I have to say I can't make a decision. I can abstain, right?
That's your job. You can abstain.
You can't abstain.
Yeah, abstain is my.
So we have 3 votes yes, 1 abstention. The motion passes.
I got the report. I have a question on that.
Which we did. Yeah, we did. Okay, and I apologize, we're still in the middle of a meeting, so I apologize.
yeah.
We'll have to, at the
sorry.
conclusion, after its adjournment, anyone can come up and ask any questions they might
we
wish
have-
I'm
to.
happy to talk to anybody
Yeah.
after the meeting.
So,
We have meeting minutes to approve. Yeah.
yes, we have 2 sets of meeting minutes.
For the
One would be-
27th or the 25th?
One would be from September the 27th, and then one from October the 25th.
Yeah. So.
Right.
Do I hear a movement?
So if you'd like, I can go over.
I wasn't here for the 25th. Oh, the 27th? I was here.
I'll make a motion to approve the 25th.
Okay, so I have a motion for the 20, so this would be for October the 25th.
Correct.
So Board Member Karoglian made a motion. Is there a second?
I wasn't
And I
here.
apologize, we're going to ask that individuals speaking in the audience, if you don't mind,
Yes, you.
give us one more moment before we... So on the 25th, actually, we
Just have a question. What does this S-plate mean? Splayed,
On the 25th?
rather than a splayed staircase. Yeah, the 5th one.
I'm sorry, on which page out for the minutes of the 25th?
Is that something on the number 5, condition number 5? Use straight rather than a splayed stairs? Oh, or slide, so, okay, never mind. I remember what we talked about.
What? Let's see.
Okay, I'll second that.
I have a second by Board Member Malikian. In terms of a roll call, Board Member Karoglian?
Yes.
Board Member Malikian?
Yes.
Chairman Zarifian?
Yes.
Board Member Sakai is not present, so the motion passes. And the meeting minutes of September the 27th, and Chairman Zarifian was not present, but the
Yeah.
3 other board members were, so.
Make a motion to approve the minutes for September 27th.
I have a motion by Board Member Garagos. Is there a second? I'm sorry,
Was
there?
I here? No, I was not.
You were.
Was I here?
You were here.
You were.
I'll second it, I read it.
Board Member
Remember
Malikian, in
anything.
terms of roll call, Board Member Garagos.
Yes.
Board Member Malikian.
Yes.
Board Member Karoglian.
Yes.
Okay, the motion passes 3-0. I don't believe, Tim, staff announcements? None? Is there a motion to adjourn the meeting?
Make such a motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting is now